Awesome. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a chance to jump in, take the quiz. There were rules in place that I couldn't take it, so don't worry, I won't win anything. But we will announce the winners as soon as this segment is done. But without further ado, I really wanted to introduce one of our partners, UPS and Matt Guffey. We've had the honor of working with UPS for the past 5 years, and me personally, I've had the opportunity to work with the UPS team over the last 4 years. I had an opportunity to meet Matt earlier this year, and he's just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to this. Matt Guffey, he is at the president of global strategy at UPS, and he started his UPS career in 2000 as one of the marketing specialists in the center of the U.S. in Decatur, Illinois. And he supported the creation of the UPS communication strategies to increase the presence in the European market. And while doing that, he was also had a presence in the UK, Ireland, and also the Nordics. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Matt, and he will definitely take us through some valuable insights on the UPS segment and how they have been impacted by COVID through the holiday season as well.
First off, thank you so much for the time and the opportunity. We appreciate the partnership with NetElixir, and we appreciate the opportunity here. So we did pull a little bit of a change, just so you have to listen to this segment. The winners won't be announced until the end. So a bit of a piece for you to hang on a little bit. So I know it's been a great day. It's been a full day of insights. And how do you think about the holiday readiness, and how do you think about preparing for peak? And if you go to my first slide, there's really three messages that I would like to start with, and then as I walk through, these next subsequent slides, really highlighting the impact of COVID, how that's accelerated some things. But 2020 has delivered not only some challenges, but also some opportunities. We've gleaned some significant insights with how do you think about maximizing these opportunities going forward? How do you think about preparing as we go into this, holiday season? And when I say preparing, both from having a plan A and a plan B, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. The other piece is the value of understanding the needs of your existing customers and how they've changed, but also the new needs that have started to emerge. And how do you really enable and build this, these future success stories that for all of us? And as you think about from a small and medium business perspective, is how do you position yourself to really tap into the new set of needs for customers as you think about a post-COVID world? And then lastly, I think the piece is that's critically important is thinking about partnerships, thinking about demand generation, and again, this new normal. This second generation of e-commerce and how we've seen an acceleration of e-commerce and how it's continuing to accelerate, is how do you have the right partnerships and planning, not just from a product perspective, but also including the logistical component of it. And how do you think about this last 1 mile and how that can be an opportunity, one, to create loyalty with customers, to drive an experience, and to really improve or impact your current channels. So as you think about this, if I would have started with this a few years ago, I would have been tempted to dive right into the peak topic. But I think we have to focus on critical things and how we think about the upcoming holiday season. So I promise I'll get to the peak component, but I just want to make sure as you think about this unique challenges as we go into this year, none of us have the crystal ball. But what do we have to think about from a peak readiness? So if you go to that next slide, I'd appreciate it. So let me start with some of the macro trends, and then what I'll do is I'll double click and step my way down here. But the delivery experience represents a significant market opportunity. I had the opportunity to listen to a few of the speakers earlier on that talked about, a few of them talked about the importance of, again, the last mile or that touch point of how do you make delivery as a component in a digital world. How do you ensure that you have the touch points and understand the digital body language of your customers? A couple things though that are driving, and this is from a macro perspective, is that's really these are enablers that are driving an increased speed market and driving also next day delivery disruptions when you think about the small package market in the United States. One is e-commerce growth. and the maturation of that, and how that's really evolving again at an accelerated pace. We're seeing a lot of customers, large customers, really realigning fulfillment center locations and getting closer to the customer, understanding that one is speed is important. Also, reliability is a big component of that. But how do you get closer to the customers to be able to fulfill orders? And to the time that a consumer orders, it's the time the website to the time that they receive the packet. And specifically relying on ground. And how do you think about the ground next day service? So not just a through the air, but also creating this opportunity to get closer to the customer. The other thing is when you think about value chain consolidation is, this integration of the supply chain and the integration of the levers that happen within the supply chain. And this goes back to really thinking about holistically your entire supply chain. If it's regional focused, if it's globally focused, but thinking about, again, how do you manage the supply and demand levers within it? How do you think about really the products coming inbound to the time they reach the end consumer? And then offering these targeted next day delivery options can obviously, there's some challenges with it, but can get you, when you get closer to the customer, can get you the opportunity to improve the costs. There's a lot of disintermediation that's taking place over these even pre-COVID, and producing new market responsive products that have really fast forwarded to enable new businesses to move to the forefront. So when you think about your business and thinking about opportunities either to disrupt or to tap into this acceleration of e-commerce, and this, you have to think about it from a digital lens, and thinking about how do you reach customers in new channels. I'll give you an example of a customer we worked with earlier in the year that really prepared unknowingly of COVID, but really took advantage of their digital strategy and really how they have to pivot and still rely on some of the traditional methods, but also create new channels through digital avenue. Then the last piece is these, as you think about, we've seen it with some of the essential goods, but when you think about new delivery entrants and business models and, this gig economy that we live in, is thinking about, and we've seen it in the grocery industry, and some of that has been even taking place outside of the US for quite some time as well. But how do you leverage the mobile and digital platforms to be able to engage and drive a much different experience? The digital platforms is key because I think it can provide, again, traditional small and medium businesses that haven't been engaged or might just have a website. But how do you think about partnering with the right digital platform, again, to reach I'll call it a one-to-many approach, to reach new customers, to reach new demographics of customers, and again, to drive a significant opportunity in additional revenue. So if you go to the next slide, please. So I want to walk through, if I could, the 5 medallions here and thinking about the impact of COVID and how it has accelerated e-commerce. And although the surge has exposed potential gaps within supply chain, it's also exposed some opportunities. The new customers are buying online for the first time, and here's what we're seeing is it's an interesting thing that you've got a different demographics of individuals that are really going online because they've been forced to. Traditionally, because of certain challenges that they've had, they didn't want to be, whether it's security or convenience. They didn't go out and order online, and they didn't have, whether it's mobile or even just to a website, weren't comfortable. And I often think about this and use, I think about my father even as a experiment here is typically didn't order anything online, bought in a store, continued to make purchase in a store, and had loyalty to certain retailers. This, through COVID, it's forced a different change. And what's happened is, now that he's engaged online and was forced to do that, it's created a loyalty to new brands. It's created a loyalty and to the digital experience. And I think as important, he's realized how convenient and how secure the experience is, right? Whether it's on a website or mobile, it gives. If I'm a small and medium business, I'm thinking about the new opportunities to tap into these new demographics and acquire new customers. And as important, making it such a great experience through buying online and the last 1 mile that you create loyalty over time. The next piece here is when you think about the existing customers and they're also increasing frequency of online purchases. I mean, e-commerce buyers are buying more and more frequently, and the evidence, the changing of the nature of home purchases, right? Furniture, appliances, we're quickly transitioning to a primary online experience that truly, it drives a different, they want to necessitate new features. They want to think about different color and fabric. So providing optionality as you think about engaging a consumer, a new opportunity, new customer online is critical. The discovering benefits of quality, convenience, and security is one that I hit on, tied it to the new customer, is individuals are starting to understand that, across all, from essential goods all the way through to when you think about, online sporting goods, when you think about, buying clothing, or ordering, even we've seen alcohol and wine, all those things as you think about when that quality, convenience, and security is driving more and more to this, again, this online experience. We're also seeing, store closures. We've all read and I think and witnessed the considerable challenges to most of some of these store closures, but not all brick and mortar businesses are facing store closures. So although you see some of those and you read about some of those, I think it's important that there are creative avenues that they're creating to create, to change the logistics experience. And this buy online, pick up in store, which we're seeing increasing, is really driving a much different experience and a much better result for some of these stores. So it's causing many businesses to take a hard look at their internal processes and what they're doing currently, what they need to do, and how they need to take advantage of going to a much more digital experience. And then the last piece is in response, businesses are starting to reinvent themselves. And if I could tell you just a story about, a small and medium business it's domiciled in the Midwest in the US, and they sell online sporting goods to the home. And their typical model was, as you think about buying, ping pong tables, buying, shuffleboards, buying, cornhole games, that sporting goods that people are starting to really, since they're driven to stay in the home, it's started to accelerate. Their model was typically a B2B, so they're going to big box retailers and selling a big portion of their product to the big box retailers. And what's happened, obviously, because of the, not just the number of closures, but as individuals have started to stay home, and the demand for their goods has shot up significantly. And what they quickly had to do was, although they had digital platforms, they quickly had to identify new ways to create new experiences digitally. And also partnering, I'm a customer of UPS's, but partnering with us as a logistics arm is creating that last mile experience for them. And it's not just about moving the good from A to B, but it's also the information, and it's also letting the end customer or the end consignee understand when it's coming, and understanding that they have access and control over that package, and understanding that they can provide even though it's a digital engagement, they can provide a much different experience through that last 1 mile, which has been key. And this company, by again having the agility and being able to pivot very quickly and anticipate some of this, it's been very, very successful for them, where they've seen growth, year-over-year growth of the 40, 50, 60%, where they wouldn't have historically seen. So again, I think it's this importance of how do businesses evaluate how they can reinvent themselves and create new channels for growth. If you go to the next slide, please. A couple things which is changing at a very, very rapid pace, and let me call out just a few things, is as we're still in, as you think about moving through COVID, you think about major categories and where consumers are spending more currently on essential goods, although they're spending more. And I want to be clear on this slide. You can see a range of goods and products where they do plan to spend more. And then you see on the right-hand side where they plan to spend less currently. This is starting to shift even as we speak. Month to month, you're seeing even some, a shift from just the significant growth of essential to even the non-essential goods are being, driven by e-commerce. Individuals and consumers are buying more and more of that. I think it's interesting because it's, although you have to have an understanding of and tap into these opportunities, the right-hand side of the screen, you're still seeing significant growth, but currently through a COVID world, because of the need for essential products, you're seeing more of those products on the left-hand side. And again, preventative health care, some of those things, you're seeing the online grocery orders, right? Fresh foods, organic foods, which is driving driving significant growth into those product lines as well. But I don't want to dilute the right-hand side, because it's, like I said, we're still seeing, I just gave the example of sporting goods. That would fall on the right-hand side, but they're taking advantage of those opportunities. And I think it's an important piece because, the supply chains which have seen, most recently, not, uneven demand curves, if you will, they're starting to adjust and become more nimble to be able to respond. And they're, not just from an outbound perspective, but also ensuring that they can get product and goods in to be able to sell on the website and obviously to deliver. So, as we take a look at this, while data tells us that spending in certain categories is down, we're careful on how we think about causation, because we really want to, we know that there's dips that are driven by demand, product availability, or channel availability. If you go to the next slide here, I want to hit on just some things with holiday peak, and how do you think about, being prepared for the knowns and then I'll call them the known unknowns, if you will. And as you think about going into peak, and look, every year I want to be clear is when we start peak planning at UPS in January, and so we plan for the year. Obviously, it's like our Super Bowl. But we plan starting in January, and in each month as we go through and building up to peak, we prepare and ensuring that we have the network, the reliability for our customers, and all that supports that. As I mentioned, that not just the transfer of goods, but also information and the value of making sure that we have all the information that can pass from our shippers and our customers to their customers. So when you think about the timing, though, this year versus last year was a very compressed peak period, right? When you think about even in our business, we had about a 17-day peak period last year as it relates to peak. So and many of you probably realize this and saw this as well. So we saw a lot of demand going into those 17 days. This year, you have the way the holidays fall, you do have a longer peak period. However, the day of week that it falls, right, with Christmas falling at the end of the week on a Friday this year, which doesn't give some small and medium businesses the opportunity to have the weekend typically to ship a package. So you'll see a lot of ordering taking place on a Monday, Tuesday. So there's a lot of dynamics. But my point is I think it's just understanding what those dynamics are and preparing for them. And how do you make a reservation, and how do you have the right partner so that you ensure that as you create some of the things that I talked about earlier, when you have an opportunity to create and touch new customers, when you're leveraging new channels and new digital platforms, thinking about that last 1 mile and the partner, I think, is significantly valuable. And that's why I highlight that first point on the importance of e-commerce and digital channels. We talked about inventory levels. We talked about, the calendar shift and the last mile capacity challenges. It's making sure that you prepare. And I think it's important to know on how you run your sales and how you think about, if you plan to run sales, how do you do that from a timing perspective so that you can drive behavior earlier in a peak season to ensure that you can reach, again, those customers, whether they're existing or new, and have a great experience. If you think about the right-hand side of some of the unknowns, is some of the things that and this is why you have to think a plan A and a plan B, is the consumer behavior. Will social distancing during the holidays drive more gift giving and shipping activity? I mean, we've seen significant growth during COVID. We've seen peak-like volumes during COVID. And how do you think about, that now with opportunities going into peak season, and what will happen over these next few months, I think will be telling. The other couple other things that we take into consideration, obviously the stimulus effect. Will there be an additional stimulus package and the timing on that? I think that's an important component to think through on when you think about whether it's discretionary spend or essential goods, how that will play out. The holiday economics, what will the consumer outlook be like from post-election? There's a lot of that goes into play as well. And then the holiday season, what will drive the start of the holiday purchasing? We know certain large retailers are running early. They run even sales and even certain specific days outside of peak season. How will that start to drive, or could it provoke an early peak season? What purchasing behaviors will we see between the brick and mortar and online, and how that will shift over time? So from our view, it's really thinking about getting in and understand those unknowns will transcribe over the next coming weeks and months, but understanding the knowns and what you have to take advantage of with this, again, last mile opportunity to create a much different experience as you go into peak season. If you go to the next slide, please, and it's really the last slide that I want to leave you with. And I want you to think about, if you could, 5 different areas of what you need to be prepared for during peak. Is businesses that rely on product obviously must be diligent about their supply chain, and not just from an outbound, but also an inbound perspective. How do you think about getting closer to your customers? And I'll just call out a couple things that we're doing at UPS as you think about our Where to Go, which is it's an opportunity for you to leverage one of our warehouses. So if you think about, needing warehouse space, and if you think about needing to get to a certain region or a certain area within the United States, leveraging that warehouse space that can be like an on-demand type of warehousing, that you can leverage it for peak season. So again, it's ensuring that you have the warehousing, the speed, and the reliability to the customers. Number 2, e-commerce creates significant pressures on last mile logistics. I talked about this in detail, but specifically during peak seasons, and we've seen this coming through peak. So making sure that you have a plan A and a plan B. I would encourage you, though, not just from a package or a movement of goods perspective, but also when you think about how do you communicate when the package will arrive. How do you then put the control in the end consumer? And that component at the bottom there of UPS My Choice is, we have, millions of customers on the UPS My Choice solution, and understanding that visibility and that option. Number 3 here, COVID has acted as a catalyst. I think we've all seen that when it comes to e-commerce, increasing the rate of change. It's an opportunity, and it's been a challenging year, but it's an opportunity to create new customer groups and really create loyalty over time. Number 4 here, joint planning and quality logistics partners. It will pay dividends. We've seen some where they spend a lot of work on the front end, creating demand, getting product in, but leaving that last 1 mile out. I would encourage you to, how do you think about the joint planning with those partners to ensure, a partner like UPS can step in and carry that package. And then the last piece here is UPS, as an organization, one of our strategic imperatives is small and medium businesses, and providing them opportunities and providing them a great service through our peak season. And how do you think about, how we can enable you reach more customers, obviously, and leverage some of our solutions to reach your customers. So with that, I'll stop, and I know we'll go to questions, but thank you for the time.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate you and the UPS team taking the time to put all this together. A couple things I wanted to highlight, and I know this echoed through all the presentations today, how the e-commerce world has been impacting us between new customers, frequency of shoppers, businesses reinventing. I think you touched on all of those earlier in your presentation. So I think the message is really consistent here on how businesses need to adapt going into Q4 and even into next year. So with that, we do have a couple questions. So I'll start off with question 1, and I think this is probably a question I've seen on a lot of social media as well, is from the beginning of the pandemic to now, how has UPS had to grow and adapt?
So we've started this new, what we call, I'm going to say the word new, but it's digital, our new digital imperative. And when I say new, we've been at it for the last couple years, really building our digital capabilities, and also not just our own digital assets, but also the digital platforms, right?
Mhm.
And because there's many platforms that provide a lot of services that we've partnered with, again, to enable SMBs, whether it's demand creation or whether it's even just us as the logistics arm. So that's one way we've had to become very agile in our digital approach. And I think through this, through this COVID period, it's accelerated us to really start to, not just we focused on it in the past, but really accelerate some of how we're getting there and how we're really making a difference in reaching customers in a different way.
Awesome. Awesome. Appreciate that. And then the second part to that question is in lieu to that, right? Is suppose the demand spikes 10x. What would plan B? What would plan B be in case of an abnormal spike in demand?
Okay, so give me the plan B again one more time.
Yeah, so so suppose there's a spike 10x for a customer for us, right? We've seen that. We've had to pull back on some ad spend for our customers because the demand has been so high they can't handle the flow. But from an operations perspective or a warehousing perspective, what should be the plan B if that was the case?
Yeah. So one of the things that I mentioned is, look, I think when you look across the entire supply chain, you have to look at it from a manufacturing perspective, and then obviously from a logistics perspective, right? So
Mhm.
if you have product and have availability of product, right, whether you have the inventory, I would look at optionality from a plan B to really think about where else can you leverage warehousing. So if the bottleneck is within your own warehouse, how do you leverage the assets of others? And I mentioned earlier in my presentation, UPS Where to Go and that solution, right? Where we offer that service to where we can warehouse, and we do it because of what happens is the water line raises so high, our customers then need an opportunity to go elsewhere because they don't want to slow demand, right? And they've ran the advertising campaigns. So it's leveraging a solution like that then can position you. And what that enables you to do is not just the bottleneck, but also understand where the demand's coming from. So if the demand, think about if you're centrally located or if you're in, Atlanta, Georgia, but the demand is coming out on the West Coast and you want to partner and you need an additional warehouse, like the Where to Go offering that we have, you could then put that product in the Where to Go warehouse that sits in the geography with where your demand is at. So therefore, you think about it, then it cuts down on once the order's picked, it can get there in 2 days or 1 day, depending upon location. But it helps you get closer to your customers as well, while also managing some of the demand challenges.
Awesome. So my takeaway is have your customers reach out to their account managers to figure out a way on how to take advantage of that. Awesome.
Yeah, I would. Thank you so much. I would encourage that is, reach out for us, and many of you have the account managers. We would be more than happy to, walk you through and understand more of the needs that you have as you plan for the week.
Perfect. And then we have one last question. A tricky question here. So this person, they live in Silicon Valley and consider Dublin, I'm assuming that's Ireland, Dublin, Ireland to be Silicon Valley 2. Since all the multinational companies have a presence there, they would like to know how the GDPR is affecting UPS operations. This is from Barb Singleton, and she was a former UPSer.
Okay. So good question. I think this one is, so I've spent some time in that region. And I think due to the specificity of this question, I would love to be able to talk to her one-on-one first off. Look, we continually go back to and find, solutions even through GDPR that we can provide our customers. I spent quite a bit of time in Ireland, in Dublin. And so, as we worked with many of even the healthcare customers there, we found solutions and continue to find solutions to be able to, whether it's export out of, obviously export out of that country, whether it's to Europe, whether it's to the US or anywhere in the world for that matter. So as you think about some of those challenges, we do have quite a few solutions as you think through brokerage, as you think through movement of goods, and again, even funds and information. When you think about that, that's why there's a lot that goes into that question. we would be more than happy to spend some time to talk through that with her. But we do, I mean, that's a great area of the world that I think provides a lot of opportunity. I've not heard it positioned, by the way, as a Silicon Valley, but it's a great point. So thank you.
Absolutely. I took a note down. We'll make sure that she gets in touch with someone from the UPS team, Matt. So those were the three questions that we received. So once again, from the NetElixir team and everyone participating, thank you for taking the time. I know you guys have a lot going on. This is peak number 2, and you guys are going into peak number 3 coming up. So appreciate taking the time. Any last minute words for everybody?
No, first off, just again, thank you for the time. This has been great. I said earlier, as I started, I've had the opportunity to listen to some of the speakers, so I think it's a great laid out day. I would leave with the fact that UPS is looking to really support the small and medium businesses, and obviously with size comes complexity, but each one, we also understand that each one's unique, and we want to make sure that as we come and bring options and how we help you grow, because we realize when you grow, we can grow with you. So we're definitely there to partner with you, and we thank you again for the time.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thanks again, Matt. Appreciate it. So with that, I will transition over. We have some winners, but before we announce the winners, I will give you all the answers to the questions. So the first question that we had, I know you guys can't see the screen share there, but the first question was, in 2020, US e-commerce is projected to grow by X percentage. This number is probably blown out of the water right now, but the answer to question 1 was 18%. So that was B. Question 2 was, to adapt, retailers should A, leverage technology, B, rethink the store, C, reconfigure the supply chain, or D, all of the above. I think everyone got that right. So D, all of the above was the answer. Question 3 was, omni-channel shoppers are a growing trend. Answer, yes or no. Answer was yes. And then we've got a couple more questions that we can go through. And then question 4 was, UPS offers 3D printing and commercial/residential drone deliveries. It was maybe someday, happening now, potentially. The answer was happening now. And then the last 2 questions was, UPS Access Points Networks offers how many locations for convenient package drop-off? The choices were 12,000, 65,000, or 108,000 locations. The answer was 65,000 locations across the US. And lastly was question 6. Oh, here's some background noise, but hope you guys can hear me okay. And then lastly, question 6 was, UPS currently delivers about how many packages per year? 685 million, 2.3 billion, or 5.5 billion. I probably wouldn't get this question right either, but the answer is 5.5 billion. That's a lot of packages. And I'm honestly blessed my dog did not bark once for this whole presentation or all of these. So perfect. So with that, I will announce the winners. So we've got 3 winners, and we will reach out to you guys directly. So the first winner is Steve Lockridge from Hayek's. The second winner was Crichton, I hope I said that right, Crichton Strong from Overstock. And last but not least is Kayla Schneider from Strippers. So we will make sure that we get in contact with you guys. Our team will reach out, get your best address, and we could send over some gifts to you, courtesy of UPS. So with that, I'll pause. We'll take a really quick break, and we'll transition into our next presentation. But again, if you guys have any questions, concerns, topics that you want us to discuss briefly, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll keep in touch.